Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I'm Brendan Lee with thebrendonlee.com in support of consciousness and skill worldwide. In this video, I want to talk to you about a growth in consciousness and consider with you, what is a growth in consciousness? So this question came off of my forum where I invite people to come in, ask questions so that I can work in dialogue, and it also helps me create content for these videos, so please keep them coming. I appreciate it. So the question is, what is a growth in consciousness? Somebody's asked for some clarification. A growth in consciousness I have is distinct from, say, a growth in knowledge or some sort of intellectual understanding, right? I think what most people consider growing is increasing their knowledge base or increasing their knowing of something. And I don't think this is what an increase in consciousness is. Becoming conscious is like grasping something new about which you will have thoughts, about which you will form intellect and opinions, and you will relate to. You see, the relating to the growth itself is distinct from the growth. You see, it's relating to something, right? So we're wondering, what is the thing to which we are relating, or having thoughts about, or having feelings about? You see? So, for example, like when I can think of one example that's very powerful for me is grasping my true nature. It's like the world is one way and everything was real the way I perceived it, and then that was that, and then suddenly I grasped something new that was true, say just considering, about me, about my nature. And suddenly I was now conscious of what my nature is. Whereas before, that did not exist. So it's almost like reality is one way, and then, now I'm more conscious of what is real. And it includes that. And one of the things in this case that's tricky to get across and to communicate, save you having direct consciousness for yourself, is that I have to use some form of words to describe as if something, but there's nothing there that I can point to that we can say, that's the increase, because there is no... there's no physicality, no location, no time, no space, as if, and yet, now I can, as if, relate to this increase in consciousness. I can speak about an increase in consciousness, but I can't give it to you, and there's no objective quality, and it's not a thought, it's not a perception, it's not some fancy knowledge. It doesn't get me laid. It doesn't make me money. And yet it's real. So then you're asking me, back to the question, so then you're asking me, like, what is an increase in consciousness? It's becoming conscious of something new. So, and I also hold that it could happen in the relative domain. Like, I could say I might be working on a martial arts technique that I can't grasp, I can't get it, and then I grasp something about, here's how this works, and then I can do it. That I would also call an increase in consciousness, a discovery of some kind, in the relative domain, and I call that more like an insight or a breakthrough. Or I think about the story of Archimedes in the bathtub, and he sits down in the tub, he's working on this problem, trying to consider, and then he sits in the tub and, bingo! You see, he had an increase in consciousness about say water displacement. See, and then what happens? Then he can think about it, talk about it. It's clear that he can relate to that, and it's functional, because then he can measure the weight of the crown and then tell with certainty, is it mixed with copper or not, if you get what I'm saying. You see, he can then all of the stuff that happens after is stuff and knowledge and thoughts and feelings and relationships and working things out. But the increase itself is what happens prior to that. See, I imagine that, say, for humans to discover language, like we work on in one of the workshops here, that was definitely an increase. All of a sudden, there was something new arising that wasn't there before, and it was not a thought, as if. It was a discovery, and now it is for example, a huge base from which we think. And it allows for me to speak to you. Whereas before, that was not the case, say. Get what I'm saying? So then consider for yourself, use the video and then my talking and working with you to consider for yourself, like, what is an increase in consciousness? And perhaps the better thing to do would be for you to become conscious of something new and then grasp what that is as you're doing it. You see, but unfortunately, as far as I can tell, one of the big problems of working in these domains is people want something tangible to grab onto that's going to somehow benefit them. And there's nothing I can point to that is the consciousness itself, because it doesn't exist. And yet, it exists. So I wish I could do more for you to get you conscious. But ultimately, it's up to you. And that's the way of it. And another tricky matter seems to be that consciousness, or increasing consciousness, tends to get put into some category of like, oh, it's a religion, or oh, it's a spiritual practice, or oh, it's a dogma or belief system. And consciousness doesn't care about any of that, and yet that seems to be where we find as if access to this at least idea of becoming more conscious. It shows up in those areas, whereas it might not show up if you're a cook in a restaurant. The concerns are different, but then somehow within these structures that we humans share, like religion, for example, or dogma, spiritual belief systems, whatever, we hear about something that we would say, oh, there's an increase, or Buddhism, Buddha had got enlightened or got conscious. And so buried within the pile of shit that is belief systems and religion is this very real possibility. And I think people tend to confuse the possibility with the practice in which they find it. And I think it's useful to extract that or consider consciousness on its own terms, separate from anything else that's not it. And that can also help clarify the situation. All right, so that's a little bit of what I have for you there for your consideration. Otherwise, in terms of getting conscious, just do that on its own and don't worry about what I said in the video, because most of the time, what's being said here in the video is going to be taken on, I imagine, like some sort of new thought or new belief about consciousness, and the value is more in you becoming conscious yourself, and then you can discover that. So I want to invite you to do that. Please go discover for yourself what's true, and that will serve you better. Okay? And as much as I rant about or talk about consciousness having no value, which is completely true, there is value, but you're going to have to discover what that is for yourself on your own and after the fact. So get conscious, and then you tell me what the value is and what it allows for you in your experience. Because, hey, it could be different for different people. Okay, so I hope that's clarified a little bit about what is an increase in consciousness. If you want to get serious, please check the links in the description of this video. My name is Brendan Lee with thebrendanlee.com, in support of consciousness and skill worldwide, which is founded by Peter Ralston. Thank you. Take care.